that shape is really organic and specific and it's super complex. So is there a way that I can draw that effect, that feeling of the plane turning, without actually drawing that specific, really complex shape right away? In visual arts, it's hard to catalog a lot of the landmarks and visual information we have when we're trying to represent life. In drawing, we often apply visual aids over our field of view to measure and analyze everything that's going on. You might use a viewfinder or a pencil to measure proportion and analyze shape. In this stream, we talked about ways that you can apply imaginary information. You can use your imagination to help you analyze some of these same concepts, some of these same problems that we interact with every single drawing. To get more information like this, you should subscribe and come hang out at a stream. I'd love to see you. If I were to compare it to a pencil, it would be like a H or like a 2H. It's very light. It's good for kind of blocking out spaces and feeling form. You can make a lot of actions. I think my glove is too big to keep in this little section. So we're gonna have to pay really close attention to where it breaks that edge. It breaks the edge here. It's gonna break the edge probably up here somewhere, because there's a slight angle from my perspective. So I'm looking at my hand straight on, and like with my eye line perpendicular to my hand, this angle is just slightly raised. And I'm just using this big blocky tool the way that I think it's best suited for, which last time I was using it for everything. So I was making lines and kind of like trying to draw with it too, with like the points, which it does do a lot of that. Like my YouTube video was named The Only Tool You Need, which I think it's probably true. You're gonna need different tools for different jobs, and the more tools you have that can address more of those concerns, the better off you are. If you get the Vine charcoal from a craft store or something, the little thin kind of like round ones, those are better for like drawing lines and they have fluid consistency. Whereas if you get like Bob's Fine Vine, which is like little square chunks, looks almost like carrot chops for like a party or something, those will be more of a hard edge, like you won't be able to get as much of a mark. It's all burnt wood, so it's all the same kind of process, but some of them are more processed than others. The hole that I made for it is so big that it just kind of flops open and my hand is not actually being covered by the glove. It's more of like an environment or a cave for my hand. And maybe that's something that we can emphasize in the image. I think it's interesting, the idea that you're adorning something and that all you have to do is take up space to wear something. It would be a bit much to be like, oh, I'm gonna go wear my house today. When I'm painting, I like to have a whole key, a whole color key in front of me, so I'll always kind of bounce between like two opposite sides of my color wheel. And this is the same thing with value. I like to have the whole value set. I think it's important for me to not get tricked by my tabletops. I will look at an angle and it is perpendicular to me. The direction that I'm looking in this is more like this. My tabletop feels like it should be a straight line, but it's actually angled. And sometimes when you're drawing, it's easy to lose track of like those bits of information. My thumb here is pretty isolated, like it's a shape that exists in its own space. Like the shadows around it are darker than almost everywhere else. And it creates this feeling of like, this is a separate space than this. Is there a way that I can draw that effect, that feeling of the plane turning, without actually drawing that specific, really complex shape right away? And the way I do that is by thinking of like, what is kind of an almost the same shape that I can see. So I had this like little oval thing, this like cylindrical oval thing that looks like a word bubble or something. And I was like, that's the shape I can do. And now it feels like it's taking up that space. It's taking up that vertical space. Many times when I'm drawing, you'll see me use these just like super straight lines that don't seem like they're describing anything. Those lines are describing very specific bits of information in relationship to each other. So it's describing where 2 points meet across my page. They might not even be the same item. Like right now I'm looking at my knuckle and the top of this turn of fabric. I went to University of Washington to study specifically with an artist who emphasizes perceptual abstraction. And a lot of my teachers that I had in my undergrad were also perceptual painters. Like what I'm trying to represent is more the like abstraction of what I'm seeing rather than like the actual subject matter. But that's still a representational task. Like it's still something that you have to be going into, like knowing the fundamentals of like human anatomy. Slowly, as I build up these lines and kind of work with these little notes that I'm taking, I start to be able to correct things like proportion and size and really establish the space, but it's not set down by any one mark, which makes it really easy for me to like edit through the image. It makes it easy for me to like be able to choose how big I want the subject to be. Like, is it this big or is it this big? Like these two marks are kind of describing the same line, but they also do a different kind of like directional service for me. Yeah, I like graphic novels too. Like, haven't had a lot of time to read them lately, but I think most recently I read like Junji Ito or Tank Girl. That's what's nice about streaming is I never have to like, if I do it every day, it just eventually becomes, it's like I'm finding my process with you all rather than dogmatically dictating my process over a YouTube video that gets seen on its own. I always get to a point in a drawing where I want to start seeking resolution because maybe there's a quality of it that like captures me. Right now I'm feeling, I did lose that like weird oval shape that I had at the beginning where it like turned down, but now I want more from this. Like I want this like length to really feel established and then like maybe that angle, and then I'll feel resolved. But I always try to pinpoint like 2 or 3 things that can be my visual goal. That helps a lot with abstraction.